Scott Holiday here, and welcome back to another edition of Plus 2 Wrestling. And before we get started, you are running out of time if you want to enter the far too big year-long You Pick'em, where you need to predict what will happen in the world of professional wrestling from the Raw after WrestleMania all the way through to WrestleMania 40. Now, this will cover WWE, AEW, some independent stuff. It is a lot of questions, but the person who gets the most correct answers will get a free year subscription to the wrestling service of their choice. It's going to be a lot of fun, and right now we don't have that many contestants, so I want to get a few more, and I will be updating throughout the year on who's in the lead in the far too big year-long You Pick'em. So sign up right now in the links in the description. And now, let's plug in. April 2nd, it is Limelight 15, brought to you by Combat Zone Wrestling in Havre de Grace, Maryland at the State Theater. There you will see the number one contenders for the new CZW Tag Team Championships, The Board. That's Jared Diaz and Sebastian Cage take on CMD. Can CMD hold on to that gold in their first title defense? Find out at Limelight 15. You will also see the contract signing between Griffin McCoy and Aaron Ash. Every time these two step in a ring with one another, we cannot seem to get a definitive winner. So we're going to run it back one more time and see the contract signing at Limelight 15. So be sure to join us in Havre de Grace, Maryland on April 2nd. The doors open at 2 o'clock. The bell rings at 3, giving you plenty of time to be home for WrestleMania. Also, speaking of Griffin McCoy, check out the CZW YouTube page where we have recently uploaded the entire match between Griffin McCoy and Kenta from the CZW Arrival. There you will also hear my voice calling the action. It is a fantastic matchup, so watch that right now or when this video is over. Today on the Soapbox, I was looking over some other YouTubers' content, and I noticed a popular format is every blank ranked from worst to best. Every WrestleMania main event ranked from worst to best. Every cage match ranked from worst to best. Every Royal Rumble surprise ranked from worst to best. And I was going to do that myself. I was going to do every wrestling stipulation ranked from worst to best. And then I realized that when it comes to those big lists, everyone cares about what the worst is, and everyone cares about what the best is. No one really cares about the middle. Like, do you really want to sit here and listen to me tell you that the middlest stipulation in all of wrestling is no DQ? Do you need that? I don't think you do. So, I'm gonna cut out all of the middle, and I'm just gonna give you the best and the worst stipulation in all of wrestling. So how do we start this journey of deciding what is the best and worst stipulation? Well, we start by heading over to Webster's Dictionary. Webster's Dictionary describes a stipulation as a condition or requirement that is specified or demanded as part of an agreement. So if the agreement is has wrestling match, something then added to that is a stipulation. So that does mean a few things. For this to be considered the best stipulation match, it needs to start as a wrestling match. So there's a few things I think we have to disqualify because they're not really wrestling matches. So I would say the Boneyard match, first and foremost, doesn't count for this. Cannot be the best, cannot be the worst, because it's not a wrestling match, it's just a weird fight. Anytime they're doing like a boxing match or an arm wrestling match, you're entering different sports. That's out. The Lion's Den match, I would say we have ventured too far from the world of professional wrestling for that to be considered in that. However, I am considering things like the Final Deletion. The Final Deletion does, in fact, start in a wrestling match and then just builds out and becomes more and more insane. So I would say a final deletion match is a stipulation match. So that will be considered. Also, I'm going to just make this simpler by saying a stipulation between two individuals. So adding another person to things disqualifies it. So things like triple threat matches, things like tag team matches, we're going to consider them different things because that would require a different type of agreement because more people are involved. So anything with multiple people is out. That being said, if you really want to know, the best one's the Royal Rumble and the worst one is a lumberjack match. So let's come up with some criteria. What makes something a good stipulation and what makes something a bad stipulation? First and foremost, I think it needs to up the ante of a match. It's no longer a wrestling match. It also has this involved. So that means that logically, it has to add something to the match that raises the stakes. I'm going to give you an example here that you're not going to like. Based off of this criteria, what is a better stipulation match? Falls count anywhere or no rope breaks allowed? Give you a second to think. The answer is no rope breaks allowed because in the psychology of what wrestling should be, in a falls count anywhere match, yes, that means you can get pinned on the stage or at ringside, in the crowd, outside on the street, but you know where else you can get pinned? In the ring. And logically, you are taking two people who have trained to be professional wrestlers, so they are most comfortable fighting in the ring. So logically, they shouldn't want to leave because they are more comfortable fighting in the ring. However, something like taking away rope breaks is something that they will more likely be forced to interact with because now grabbing the ropes is no longer an easy escape. You now have to figure out a way to counter any particular hold you find yourself in. That is a stronger stipulation. And I know if you're sitting at home, you're like, well, I'd much rather see a Falls Count Anywhere match and watch them spill out into the Mississippi River like Al Snow did. Right, but from a pure psychology standpoint, there's no reason for them to leave the ring. They don't have to interact with that stipulation, so it's not as strong as a stipulation. Condition number 2, a good stipulation should be something that can naturally come up and be a logical stipulation to add. It seems to me that at times we have matches and the way we got there seems a bit strange. Like, I understand why we would have to need a special guest referee. We interact with referees, they don't do what they're supposed to, we need a special guest referee. Good. Then there's like tables matches. There happens to be a table, person gets thrown through table. That is the main aspect of the match now. Okay, we're extending the realms of what we're accepting here. But yeah, the table's at ringside and they went through the table. Okay, yeah, that's it's more of a stretch than the referee thing, but sure, okay. Two people don't like each other. They try to set each other on fire. They have an Inferno match. What? Well, now, I understand they didn't like each other, but then it became a crime. And then they decided it wouldn't be a crime and have a match. Now we're getting out of the realm of things that make sense in terms of a good stipulation here. These two people don't like each other. They want the ECW championship. They're in New Mexico. Gulf of Mexico match. No, never do that again. No. Condition number 3. it needs to do what it promises at least some of the time. So I know that the world of professional wrestling is supposed to be unpredictable and there's lots of twists and turns, but there's nothing worse to me than when every time we are faced with something, a similar twist and or turn happens. That is frustrating. I want the match to do what it promises to do. This is a tables match. You have to throw someone through a table. 100% of the time, someone goes through a table in those matches. I mean, I know there was that one time that the Big Show stepped on a table, but he went through it, so that counts. Then you have things like the I Quit match. The only way to win is to beat your opponent to a pulp, make them suffer more pain than they can handle, that they say, I quit. Great stipulation. On occasion, there are some things where, say, someone is knocked unconscious and then they play a sound file of them saying, I quit from an earlier promo, or they're beating each other so savagely and neither of them wants to give. So they start choking out your twin brother, and then you say, I quit, not because you're in pain, but because you want to protect someone you care about. Sure. That is a rarity, though. Like, that makes the I Quit match more special. I think it makes it even more effective because you're going from having something that you're pretty sure is going to happen, and then something that doesn't negate what the stipulation's supposed to be, but still changes your idea of what you thought was going to happen and is true to what the match is supposed to be. However, I would say one of the big flawed ones would be the cage match. Every cage match you see something like, I can't wait to get my hands on you. You've made me suffer for weeks. But when we step inside that steel cage and that door closes, you're gonna know that there's no escape. How do you win the match? By escaping the cage. What? But you said... Oh, I mean, okay. I guess we could do it like that. Plus, so many steel cages are either done in this person's going to get locked in there so that they can't escape and they have to fight, or the steel cage is to protect those two people from interference, because people keep interfering. How many times has the cage successfully stopped people from interfering? Like, there's a big hole in the top, and there's a door, and there's like holes all over it, so you can put like sticks through it, and apparently the ring is just something you can pull apart like it's, I don't know, paper, and ascend through that. Anytime the cage is there to eliminate outside interference, all they're actually saying is the outside interference is gonna be creative in this one. It never does its job, so that makes it sink quite a few levels in my rankings. Condition number 4, we are not including Hell in the Cell. Okay, I'm gonna level with you. I've written this script a few times, and at one point, Hell in the Cell was the best stipulation out there. And then at multiple points, Hell in the Cell was the worst stipulation out there. I'm gonna do a whole video on Hell in the Cell because it has tormented me in this entire process of trying to decide the best and worst stipulation. So it's just disqualified. I can't decide. It is gone. It'll get its own video later. So subscribe to the channel so you can see when I freak out about Hell in the Cell, which is gonna be in a few weeks. The best stipulation. So I thought about this long and hard. I've rewritten. I've had many different things at the top. For a while, it was steel cage, and then I remembered all the things I said in that previous cutaway about it, and that got rid of it. I was thinking about simple hardcore, but again, you don't actually have to use the weapons. Like, there's nothing stopping a hardcore match with ending with a roll-up. So I was thinking maybe something like Last Man Standing? I mean, granted, every time it ends with someone not being able to stand, but I think a little too often it's not that they're beaten to the point where they can't stand. They're often like duct taped or buried underneath things rather than being beaten to their limit. So that dropped it down a few times. Iron Man match was pretty close to the top for a little bit because they always go an hour. You're promised to get your hour. They often go more than an hour, though. So I don't know if that counts as them not delivering on what they promised. But they're being forced to interact with that. It's also like, it's unescapable. Like, you have to be in good condition to wrestle for an hour or a half hour. We've had a couple shorter Iron Man matches. But in the end, I think the absolute best stipulation, and again, I'm talking specifically about one-on-one matches, is the ladder match. Now, I understand that it's not the easiest thing to do to work a ladder logically into a wrestling match. But it's not about the physical ladder. It's about the idea of ascending. I'm going to use my language arts degree right now. In a ladder match, it is all about ascending higher, not just physically, but in the eyes of the company. Every ladder match is for a prize. There's never a time where you climb the ladder and you just kind of hit a button that says win. No, something's always on the line in a ladder match. It's always suspended above your head, and you have to reach above your current level to reach that and become something more. Just the visual metaphor of the ladder match is wonderful. And the ladder has to be introduced. Like, there's never been a time where you needed to grab those titles hung above the ring and someone jumped and got it. No, the ladder is a forced stipulation that you need to interact with. You don't have to use it as a weapon, but it is needing to be set up in the center of the ring. It's kind of in the way, so you're going to interact with it. And I think the WWE has kind of lost their way with the ladder match, because as I was reflecting on the ladder match, there hasn't been many one-on-one ladder matches in quite some time. And they used to be used very, very well to show that kind of like ascension to another level. Things like Triple H versus The Rock for the Intercontinental title. Things like Chris Jericho versus Chris Benoit for the Intercontinental title. Things like Jericho versus RVD for the Intercontinental title. Hey, have you noticed that they rarely use the ladder match for the main title? I think that makes a lot of sense, because if you are the world champion, you're already at the top of the mountain. Like, you don't need to ascend any higher. It's all about maintaining. But the idea of going up a level in the eyes of the fans, in the eyes of the company, works better when it is more for a mid-card title or some other prize, like Money in the Bank. I know we're not talking about Money in the Bank because it's a multi-man, but my point stands. The only times that I can really remember in my brain of the world title being defended in a ladder match are Goldust and Shawn Michaels. That was a house show, and I've always wanted to see that match, so it's always cooking in the brain. Undertaker versus Jeff Hardy, which was more about Jeff Hardy ascending, the idea of ascending this ladder and reaching a level that no one thought he would reach, and the Undertaker literally tossing him off and saying, "Stay down there, kid," until in the end, lifting him up. He didn't quite get all the way up here, where it's off out of the shot, my hand disappears, but earned some respect here on the middle part of the mountain. And also John Cena versus Orton when they were making the Undisputed titles. But again, that was still an ascension. They were each one of the champions, and then someone was going to become the Undisputed champion. Also, that was a TLC match, but it helps my point, so I'm still going to keep this in. I think just for the way that that stipulation works and the way that it looks and the metaphor that it creates, it is the greatest stipulation. It also has the added bonus of you clearly have a winner in a ladder match. Someone has clearly won the ladder match. But you don't look like too much of a loser when you lose a ladder match. Your shoulders aren't pinned. You don't give up. You just didn't win. And it's great to have a match like that that has a clear winner that can build a star that really doesn't damage the loser. So that's why my gold star for best stipulation goes to the ladder match. The worst stipulation. Okay, here it is. It's the main event. The world title is on the line. The babyface on a hot streak. It's going to pull it out, going to overcome those odds. And then someone from the back shows up and right across the back, boom, hits them with a steel chair. The heel then goes for the cover. Do you as a fan believe that the heel might pick up the win right then? I'm sure you do. We've been trained to believe that steel chair make big clang, hurt back, and makes it really hard to kick out of things, even if it's just a single arm draped across the chest. So let's go through that exact same scenario again. Babyface. I don't know why the babyface is doing this, but he's on a roll. He's doing great. He's going to overcome those odds. Someone from the back comes out and hits him right across the back with a leather belt. Do you think he's going to kick out, or do you think he's getting pinned? I would personally think he's going to kick out, because we, as wrestling fans, do not respect the leather strap, which is why the worst stipulation in all of wrestling is the leather strap match. We have seen other versions of this match. We've seen steel chain matches and dog collar matches, but for some reason we do not respect the leather strap. There's just something about how flimsy it looks and the fact that we've touched leather before, that it doesn't sell as something that is devastating. We understand that it hurts. I don't think anyone's sitting there being like, might as well have a pillow fight. No, we know that it hurts, but it stings, It's not a blunt knockout. It's just something that stings and it sucks. And it really sucks. The idea that we created a match where two wrestlers beat the hell out of each other with a leather strap, leaving welts on their body, and it's not something that in our brains we count as higher than getting hit with a chair, that's a problem. And I don't think we can train audiences to believe that a leather strap is more devastating than a steel chair at this point. So the answer is to stop doing them. I mean, have you ever seen a really good strap match? Something that was just really, really good? Because they are never what they promise to be. It is always some big, dark, when I get this strap, I'm gonna whip and whip and whip until your body's just full of welts, and then I'm gonna drag your carcass around the ring as I touch each and every turnbuckle until your lifeless corpse breathes its last breath and my hand is raised. Do we ever see that? No, it's two people playing tug of war every time. Just, I can't. I'm almost touch. And if you're confused, the idea of how leather strap matches used to work seems to have gone away, which it should. But the way that a leather strap match worked before was the only way to win was to touch all 4 turnbuckles in succession without interference from your opponent. Which, unlike the ladder match, is not a satisfying way to win a match. I touched 4 things. That's something that I think anyone watching can believe that they can do. Like, maybe not while tied to another person, but like the idea of pinning your opponent or ascending a ladder. There's danger to it. Touching 4 things, that sounds more like an escape the room thing than a physical wrestling match thing. I feel like the way that a strap match is meant to function has never worked. Because what counts as interference? I feel like every single strap match has the exact same finish. The heel, after brutally beating the babyface, starts cockily walking around, touching turnbuckles. But little do they know that right behind them, the man they're tied to, they're not paying attention to, even though they're bound together, is also touching the turnbuckles. And then heel's gonna hit that last turnbuckle, but then they notice the babyface. Oh, can't let this stand. Let me just throw you into that last turnbuckle. Ooh. I feel like we've seen that so many times. Like, I remember that being the ending to Bradshaw versus Savio Vega. I remember that being the ending to an Eddie Guerrero version of this match. Just, there's no good way to end. The only time I can remember that it didn't end that way was when Hogan uncuffed the person he was fighting and strapped someone else in. The strap match makes no sense. And I can't think of a match that I've been less excited to see every time that it happens, that also does no favors to the people in it, because they are going to suffer in this match, and does nothing for the person who wins because all they did was touch things. So that's what I have. I have at the top of the ladder, and at the bottom of the ladder, I have the strap match. Do you agree? Do you think the strap match is awesome? Why? Do you think the ladder match does not deserve that top spot? What do you think does? Please let me know in the comments down below. And while you're going down to those comments, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll get a notification next time I drop one of these videos. And also, click on that link and fill out the far too big year-long You Pick 'em, where you will decide what will happen in this upcoming year of wrestling. And until then, I'll be here. My name is Scott Holliday, and I hope you have a good day.